Alright, hoje vamos fazer uma aula pensando em present perfect. So, aqui a gente vai pensar em medir o tempo que estamos fazendo ações. Ações no presente. So, we're going to measure things that are true in the present. So, let's look at a normal sentence, a simple sentence with our subject, our verb, and our object, our one, two, three. So, something in the simple present. So, remember, simple present is something that is constantly true. The present is not now. With do does, the present is something that always repeats. The present is a frequency. It is constantly occurring, and it is a way that we can predict the future. That's the present. Everything that's true today is true next week. It's true next month. It's true in 6 months. So always we look at the present as a form, a way, forma de futuro. O presente é futuro mesmo. So, vamos ver uma frase no presente. Fato sobre eu. So, like, I write fiction. So, eu escrevo ficção. So, here we have our subject, our verb, and my dog barking, and our object. Right? That's our simple 1, 2, 3. The basis of any sentence. Right? So, with present perfect, the present perfect is kind of like uma sombra, right? Quando eu falo fato sobre eu no presente aqui, I write fiction, nós queremos sempre medir. Sempre a mesma pergunta. Quanto tempo? Right? But in English, diferente do português, quando eu quero medir verbo, right? Se eu quero medir subjeto ou objeto, sempre eu uso o verb to be. Por exemplo, eu posso falar, how old are you? Verb to be, porque é estático. How tall are you? Sua altura. Informação é estático, right? Or how old is he? Same thing. Se eu quero medir, por exemplo, o tempo de curso, filme, voo, qualquer coisa, I can say, por exemplo, how long is the flight? Right? Eu uso o verb to be porque é uma coisa estática. Podemos falar the flight is 2 hours, right? Não é uma coisa que estão sempre mudando. É uma coisa definida, uma coisa estática. É um objeto mesmo, right? It's an object, it's static, it's still, so we can measure it. Hey, Fluke, how you doing, buddy? That's Fluke the cat. So what else can we measure? We can say, how long is the movie, right? We can say, how expensive was the house, right? Tem muitos jeitos para medir. In nosso foco hoje, our focus today is going to be how long. We could say how big, how expensive, how blue, how wonderful, blah, blah, blah. But today, we want to focus just on time. Now, se eu medir o tempo de objeto, again, curso, right? How long is the course? Right? The course is 6 months. The movie is 2 hours. The flight is 23 hours, right? Verb to be. Sempre verb to be. Porque estamos medindo objeto. But aqui, nós não queremos medir objeto. Eu quero medir verbo, right? I want to see esse fato aqui. Esse verbo é fato que vai para frente. Mas eu quero medir para trás. Eu quero ter alguma coisa que é verdade aqui no presente. Eu quero medir desde quando você está fazendo essa ação. Em português, nós usamos, like, eu estou fazendo isso desde, estou morando aqui desde 2007. Eu estou escrevendo desde 2012. So here we have, what's the verb? The verb is write, right? Começou aqui. Mas nós queremos medir o tempo que estão fazendo. Quando nós aprendemos essa gramática no livro de gramática, eles falam sobre alguma coisa que começou no passado, alguma coisa que você começou no passado que vai até hoje. Sim. But eu não lembro as coisas que eu comecei no passado. Tem bilhares de coisas que eu comecei no passado que estão acontecendo hoje no presente ainda, mas eu não sei. Like, I don't remember anything. My memory's terrible, terrible. But I do know, so, como o livro de gramática, a flecha vai nessa direção, right? Pensando alguma coisa, você começou no passado, ele vai para hoje. Conosco, não. Vamos colocar o flash na outra direção, right? Let's think, vamos pensar em coisas que são verdade hoje, things I do today, right? E agora sim, eu posso lembrar quando eu comecei. So, a flecha não vai esquerda para direita, vai para direita para esquerda, right? The arrow goes in this direction. And we're looking at the different times that we are committed to our actions. And like, por que é importante? Well, porque você vai criar sombras diferentes de pessoas diferentes. Oh, why's that not working? So, podemos ter o mesmo fato e quando medimos o tempo, like o verbo, nós vemos sombras diferentes. E nós contamos histórias pelas nossas sombras. In inglês, like this is my concept of what I call shadows, but which is no different to paintings, right? In language, we use shadows for contrast. Words are paint. And learning how to create contrast is really important in language, in not just language, but in storytelling, in the way that we communicate with each other to tell really cool or interesting stories. So let's look at the simple thing, right? I want to measure the time. So my question becomes, how long? No, how long time? Esse aqui, no. How long time? No. Por quê? Porque how long já é metros ou horas? Já. It's meters, centimeters. Sorry, Americans. It's meters and centimeters, metric. Or it's hours and seconds already. So if you say how long is, right, we go here, how long, step A. So here we have A, B, C, D, e geralmente E. Right, so if I say how long is, estamos medindo alguma coisa estático, like curso, filme, alguma coisa. No queremos isso, right? We don't want to measure the subject and the object. We want to measure the verb. So it'll be how long have. Right? Now, com esse auxiliar, o momento que você fala how long have, com certeza eu sei que você está medindo esse verbo. Com certeza. So how long have you written fiction? That's it. So, com essa gramática, meu verbo fica no forma do participal. Lembrando que nós temos três formas de verbo: do, did, and done. Do é presente, mas presente é o quê? É futuro. Right? Like, I teach, I will teach, I'm going to teach, I have to teach, I should teach, I'd better teach, I can't teach, I get to teach. Teach nunca muda. Teach sempre é do. So, tudo no presente é futuro mesmo. That's do. Did, passado. Done é nossa principal que resolve muitas coisas sobre o futuro passado que não é exatamente em ponto de tempo. So that's our participle. So neste caso, estamos usando o participle no pergunta mesmo. So we say our auxiliary here, how long have you, so yellow, written fiction? There's my 1, 2, 3. So we have A, B, C, D, E. Essa parte aqui. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So A, nossa pergunta aqui. B, auxiliar, have or has. C, subject. D, verbo. E, objeto. E nós queremos tempo no fim. E a gente vai ganhar essa resposta aqui. So we can say, I've written fiction for 12 years. Right, so that's one thing we can do. We can do that for other verbs as well. So we'll give one more example. Okay, I teach English, right? So again, we want to measure this verb porque nós queremos julgar a pessoa. We want to judge a person, right? Again, a sombra diferente. If we have two people and we say, I teach English, and we say, Jeff teaches English, right, nós temos dois fatos, duas pessoas diferentes, right? And o fato é a mesma coisa. But now we want to know, like, quanto tempo. Por quê? Porque essa é a primeira pergunta sempre que nós queremos saber. Porque tempo significa sofrimento. Time is suffering. Through suffering, we learn. We don't learn through good days and good times, ever. We don't develop our strength, our ability, and our capacity, our tenacity our will, our hope, our inspiration in good times. No, in our good times, we become lazy and flaccid and kind of in danger to ourselves. In difficult times, in hardship, we develop ourselves always. What was it, that expression that the roots of education are bitter, but the fruit is sweet. But still, as we get older, we pursue constant education. We pursue bitter experiences because we grow through those bitter experiences because we are the flower, or something like that. I don't know. But either way, we have two facts. So in both cases, we would have two questions. We would say, here, how long? Again, eu quero medir. I want to measure this verb, teach. So we're going to say, how long have? Now, what do we need? What's the next part? That's part one, how long? Now we have our auxiliary. What's the next part? The next part is the subject. So we have how long, have. Agora, we need a person. How long have you? And o que é o próximo? O verbo, right? O que é o nosso verbo aqui? Nós temos teach no presente, ele vira o que no participal? Taught. Sim, GH é mágica in inglês. GH is magical. GH é Gaelico. It comes from Ireland, right? It's Gaelic. It's Irish. So the GH can be silent most of the time, but also the GH can be Fs. So it can be, for example, cough, rough, laugh, or it could be though, thought, taught. In this case, taught, right? The participle of teach. So how long have you taught English? That's our question. The answer will be, because I'm always, sempre eu vou contrair. I'm always going to contract where I can. Com pronomes, with a pronoun, I always contract with a pronoun. So I've taught English for 17 years. Holy moly, that's a long time. Right, so now we get, where's our two people? We get the sombra, we get the shadow, right? 17 years. It's a long shadow. It's a long time. There's a lot of suffering. There's a lot of learning. There's a lot of evolving, changing, discovering, constantly discovering yourself. Right, so let's look at Jeff. And we'll say, how long? So now it's gossip, right? É fofoca, right? So because Jeff is terceira pessoa. Terceira pessoa is what? Like sempre fofoca or gossip always has an S. So have, for me, for Jeff, it's has. This is our auxiliary for gossip. So we'll say how long? Has. Now what is our subject? Well, we don't want to, nós não queremos repetir. We don't want to repeat Jeff. So we say how long has he? And then what's my verb? Well, the same here. Our participle for teaches is taught. And then we put English. So let's pretend Jeff is new, right? So we say we'll say he's, which is he has. I'll put it the whole sentence. He has taught English for 6 weeks. Right, that's nice. And aqui a gente sempre vai contrair, right? I've, eu, he's. And then we just focus on this participle. Right, so here we get now the shadow for Jeff. And we do. Nós julgamos pelo tamanho da sombra. We do. We judge people for different things. By the shadow tells different stories. Tem narrativas diferentes sempre. Now, that's not the only way that we can measure a shadow in a person. We can also measure the object, right? So how long will tell me the time that I perform this action. But then how do I measure? So how long looks like this, right? It's estamos medindo tempo, so é uma coisa linear, right? It's going left to right. We're measuring. So if time is the input, right? It's what we give. Then the object is the output, right? It's what we create. So estamos medindo no left to right. We're measuring down to up, right? We're measuring a quantity of output. There's always a quantity of output. Whatever you do, there is a result to what you do. If you do nothing, nothing is a result. So there's always a result we can measure. So how do we do that? Let's look here at I write fiction. So measuring the input, like the commitment, the verb, the action, it's how long. Measuring the output, well, how many. Because now nós queremos medir a quantidade de objetos. So I write fiction. Eu escrevo ficção. Okay, what is the object? O que pode ser o objeto que podemos medir? What can we measure? Well, we can measure books, right? Titles, books, whatever you want to call it. That's the output of what we do. So, sorry, Flick. We can say how many, and now what is this? It's going to be how many books. Now, so that's o primeiro parte aqui. How many books? We'll make that even blue for us. Next part is our auxiliary, have. Next is subject. And next is our verb. That's it. So let's put color. How many books have you written? So, quantos livros você escreveu até agora? Sempre é até agora, neste caso. Right? So, how many books have you written till now? So, I've written 24 novels or 24 books. Right? So, there we have my subject with the auxiliary connected, my verb, and my object. Right? And this how many is just giving us ele vai dar o adjetivo, quantidade. But we keep that all together, how many books? And we get 24 books. We could do the same thing with English, right? I teach English. I've taught English for 17 years. Okay. How many is always the question. Para medir o resultado, o quantidade, the output, it's always how many. But what can we measure, right? If the truth, this sentence is I teach English, what can we measure? What can be, o que pode ser resultado? O que pode ser the output here? Well, it could be, for example, how many classes have you taught? Right? So now, essa parte azul é quantas aulas que você deu em 16 anos? No idea. We could also measure how many students have you taught? We could measure, I don't know, how many grammar lessons have you given? Either way, like it's very simple. Like this object, there's always some output. There's always something we could measure. For example, if I say I live in Brazil, right? So for the live question, it becomes how long have you lived there? Right? I've lived here for 17 years. Then we look at Brazil, right? O que podemos medir aqui para julgar uma pessoa? Like, what's interesting? What's an interesting output? Obviously, it's always going to be how many, right? So maybe it's, for example, how many cities have you lived in? Maybe it's how many houses have you rented? Maybe it's how many times have you been married and divorced? Just the once. Maybe it's, for example, like what happens in Brazil? How many times have you been robbed? Never. Knock on wood. What else? How many World Cups have you cried in? There's many ways that we could describe the output of living in Brazil, because living in Brazil is everything. It's good, bad, it's insane, it's wonderful, it's terrible, it's backwards, it's forwards, it's upside down, it's the right way round. It's the greatest thing in the world, and it's the most terrible thing in the world. It's all things together, never ordinary, always quite potent, rich, and extreme. But that's it. Like, there's many, tem muitas possibilidades de perguntas de quanto coisas aconteceu no tempo que você está aqui. So that's it. Like when we create this shadow, quando estamos criando essa sombra, right? We have some truth, alguma coisa que é verdade, and then we say like, well, how long have you been doing that? Quanto tempo que você fez isso? Right? And then like another question is how many? You know, how many have you done? I'd say like I run long distance, right? So I like running more than 20 kilometers. It's fun. So we can say, well, how long have you run long distance? Right, so that's the easy question. I've run long distance for blah, 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 blah. And then, okay, o que pode ser a resulta daqui? Pode ser, por example, how many races have you run? Or maybe, how many times have you torn a hamstring? Because injuries and running kind of go hand in hand when you push your limits. Even here, like if we come back to this one here, fiction, right? The simple one is how many books have you written, right? But there's other things we could ask as well. Like one of the first questions when people see or people find out I write books, the first question is how much money have you made? Like quanto dinheiro você ganhou? And it's always difficult to explain that you don't create art for money. Those two things are two different worlds altogether. One is art, the other is marketing and sales. They are independent of one another. They're part of a process, but each one is separate to the other. So that's just me defending that question. But yeah, that's a possible question. How many awards have you won? The real life of a writer is this question. How many rejection letters have you received from literary agents? Fucking many. Yeah. That's the real question. Quantas vezes você receber cartas de rejeição de agências literárias? Many rejection letters. But that's it. So that's a very brief, but actually it's not that brief because this probably went for a while, but our two questions, right? How long have you done this, right? How long have you done? And how many have you done? And that's it. We can measure two things, right? Here, we're measuring time and we're measuring output. And then, yeah, we judge. Nós julgamos pelo o tempo que alguém está fazendo alguma coisa e o resultado das suas ações. We measure that output, right? If we look at a simple one, just to finish us, to understand like that judgment, we could say, John is reading Infinite Jest. I don't know books, but I just know this book because one of my students has been told that he should read it. I was going to buy it, and then Amazon took too fucking long, so I canceled it. And I think it's the book I'm supposed to read. I've only read 3 books in my life, and I think I'm supposed to read this one. And then apparently at the end you hang yourself. I think that's why I'm supposed to read it. So John is reading Infinite Jest. So we would say like, how long has he been reading? Or how long has he been reading it? Right? Why are we doing been reading? Because we have, that's my verb that I'm changing, right? John is reading right now, or in the perceivable now. And here we just have the auxiliary, the gerund, sorry, right? So that doesn't change there. That stays the same. We're only changing the verb, right? Reading is not a verb. Reading is a gerund. The verb is. So that's it. Then we'd say he's been reading it for 2 hours, right? So what are we going to measure? We can say, how many pages has he read? Quantas páginas ele leu? We say maybe he's read 700 pages, right? And then now you judge him. You're like, wow, he's a good reader. I don't know. Maybe that's good. I don't know. If that's me, I'll say I've read like 30 words because I'm an idiot. I'm very slow with everything, and I forget what's happening all the time. It's very lucky I got this far in life. But that's it. We judge the person by the time they spend doing something and their output. For people who read books, that's very important for them. In the same way I run, and I like to run races, 5K, 10K, 15K, 21K. And in short races, 5K, 7K, 10K, yeah, we judge ourselves by our pace, right? So how fast we did something. And it can make a good race even terrible when you look at your watch and you're like, fuck, because you're a second slower than you were in your last race. But also it can make it really exciting when you're a second faster. So we always judge the time, the output. We do it. So that's that. Here we were just measuring in this class, we're measuring the verb, the time that we do something, how long have you done this, and the output, how many have you done. That's it. Thank you so much. I'll see you in the next video. I'm going to make more of them, I promise. Or I don't promise. I don't promise anything. Thanks.